Hello, my name is Dr. Ruthie. I am a professional sexuality educator and a relationship coach, and I blog over at Exploring Intimacy with lots of product reviews and sex ed videos like the one I'm doing for you now. Funwares.com is sponsoring my educational series, so thank you to them. And I'm here answering your questions on sex and relationships. This question is something that I heard recently at a workshop, and I wanted to bring here to videos with you. If you want to send in your own question, you can do so at AskDrRuthie at funwares.com. That's AskDrRuthie at funwares.com. So the question I got was from this absolutely adorable couple. It was a guy-girl couple. They had been together for years, and they had a little trouble actually asking their question. Not that they were shy or ashamed or anything like that, but it had been kind of such a topic that it made sense that they were having trouble even telling other people about it. And that topic was neither of them liked to initiate sex with each other. And it's not that they didn't like sex with each other, and it's not that they didn't want to do it, it's just that neither of them were initiators. And how funny that when they came to talk to me about it, they had trouble making someone the initiator to get the question out as well. But you know, it makes perfect sense if you think about it. When we're not talking about having sex, how do we get back in the habit of talking about it again? Even talking about not talking about it, right? To get to that meta communication level. Anyway, so I was just thrilled with this question, and I was so glad that they asked, because I think this is a very common, normal question that couples have, that folks get into. And, you know, they didn't necessarily feel that their sex life was stale, although they admitted that it does kind of have a pattern, but really they weren't even so worried about the pattern. They were really worried about not even getting to the point of getting to get into the pattern as much as they would like to, because nobody was initiating. So I said, well, when you guys are having sex, him and her, who's usually the initiator here? And they both said, oh, he is. And I said, how do you like that role? And he said, don't really care for it, but it's better than not having any sex. And then I said to her, how do you let him know that you want him to initiate? Because I did ask about rejection. He said, no, I don't really get rejected a lot, although that's a concern. I said, oh, well, then you must kind of know when she's interested. Either that or she's always interested or you are never interested. He said, no, I generally know. And that's when I asked her, how do you let him know that you want him to initiate sex with you? And she said, well, I look at him and I say, hey, do you want to go beep? Censoring that for you. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I said out loud, it sounds to me like you're initiating. She said, well, yeah, I guess I sort of am, but then I want him to initiate the physical side of it. And neither of us are really happy that way. And I said, gosh, I don't blame you. That sounds like a really fun, spontaneous way to do things, but if that's the only way it happens, especially in a long-term caring relationship, you know, I can see that getting a little tired and showing that neither of you are really interested in it. So here's what I talked about with them, interested in it by the initiation, not the sex. Here's what I talked about with them, and I think it may help a great deal of you out there as well. The first thing is to just sit down and say, why is it that I don't want to initiate, or I'm not initiating in the ways I want to initiate? So they both said they didn't want to and that they weren't initiating, but quite clearly both of them had a way of initiating. She did it verbally and he did it physically after receiving her verbal feedback. So why don't you like it? You know, the first possible thought, and I see this with a lot of couples and individuals who are dating different folks, is the idea of obligation. When you initiate, it obligates you to certain things, possibly obligating you to only what the other partner wants, especially if you're eager and you're hoping it'll work out, but you're not sure if it will, so you really want to please and do what they want to do. Or simply that you feel like once it's been initiated, you can't change your mind, or you can't settle for some, you know, if intercourse is up here and we think of sex, I hate to think of this way, but a lot of people do, as kind of a progression towards that, and intercourse being, you know, the woo, top of the list thing. You know, if we think about it that way, and then we think to ourselves, well, I'm nervous about initiating because that my partner won't want to stop on the ladder anywhere else. Now, of course, I've done videos on defining sex more broadly than this and getting away from this ladder mentality, which can be very, very helpful in this situation. But for folks who aren't at that point for whatever reason, That's a big concern. This notion like, well, I'm not really going to initiate anything because what I really want to do is make outie time. And I know that if I put that out there, they're going to want to take it all the way to intercourse because it's been a long time or that's what they like and I'm finally doing it or whatever the case may be. Obligation may be a concern. Rejection is another very valid concern. You know, if one partner is always initiating and the other partner has the gatekeeping role, it can be very difficult on the initiator, and the gatekeeper can get into an awkward habit too because, you know, whether we say it out loud to ourselves and each other or not, being the gatekeeper on sex or sexuality can be a kind of over-consuming role. You know, at what point is it good enough for us to have sex? So oftentimes, especially in heterosexual relationships, but I'm sure in all kinds, I run into these situations where she is saying no because the house isn't clean, because she hasn't spent enough time, you know, just being romantic but non-sexual with her partner, because she's tired with the kids, because they have to get somewhere, because all the things she needed to do for the day won't happen, they're weighing on her mind. And in the end, all of these things that really don't necessarily have to do with sex come in and impact the sex through the gatekeeping process. And then sex loses its ability for that to be some of that adult time they share together, for it to bring them closer, for her to feel valued and pampered by her partner, for her to just have fun and take those things off her shoulders. Now, I'm not saying that she should say yes when all those things are going on. I'm saying that there's a deeper conversation needed because sex is maybe taking on too much, but also because obviously other things are out of balance that are not going to get worked out through the gatekeeping of sex, and absolutely must be worked out and should be worked out in a more effective manner. So, you know, getting those things conflated with each other stops us from making it effective. She can still be saying no, but it's not going to fix that other stuff, so we need to fix that other stuff too. Anyway, so all of these things play into rejection and the gatekeeping mentality. So is that part of it? Mm-hmm. Are we just out of the habit? Are we out of the habit of having sex? Are we out of the habit of initiating sex? Whatever the case may be. And, you know, we get into these habits. Sometimes folks, you know, they say use it or lose it. And I totally hate that phrase. What I would rather say is, you know, continue to stay in the habit with it, or you have to rebuild the habits again. And that's very much the case with this. You know, if we get into the place where it's been dry for a while, we kind of lose that. So figuring out what's happening first is a really important first step, because then you can deal with those background concerns. I'm all about sexual healing, but sometimes we got to bring in some other healing and balance the relationship in addition to sexual healing, or we have to use sexual healing to kick those things off. So what are my tips for folks once we've figured out the issue? The first is get back to both of you feeling obligated to free-form flirting. That means that it's not necessarily seen as an initiation towards sex, although you may be hopeful, one or both of you, but that you are getting back to the process of flirting with each other, because that's how sex is frequently initiated by young, hot couples. It's the flirting, and maybe they don't even realize they're flirting because they fall into the bed so quickly, but it's that flirting that keeps the tension high, and that there's a natural progression towards initiation then. Practice sex-free initiation. And that's saying in the beginning, you know, I'm feeling a little flirty with you right now. And what I would really love is if maybe we end up having some great make-out time. I don't know if I'm in the mood for more than that, but I hope you'll let me flirt with you for that. You know, or whatever way it is you want to communicate where the end boundary is to that, so that you don't have to feel obligated to more than what you're really in the mood for. But if you're both in the mood for that later, hey, there's a bonus to that too, right? Redevelop your own secret codes. At some point you probably had some more romantic, more sexual or sensual codes for initiating sex with each other than, hey, I really want you to F me, and rolling over to the other person and being like, hey baby, are you in the mood, right before the light goes out or right after it goes out. And so those little secret codes of, you know, leaving a lacy pair of panties on the bed, or having a special blanket that you like to have sex on and making that visually available, or sending each other text messages, little things that the other person can turn down without a big fear of rejection, but that communicate that sexual interest, that I want you to flirt with me. I'm shy to initiate the flirting, but I want you to do it. My last tip to you is to spend more close time together in general. And by close, I mean snuggling while you're watching movies or TV, sitting arm in arm next to each other at the restaurant when you go out to eat, and just physical proximity. Physical proximity makes it easier for us to flirt with people because we feel, you know, more comfortable in each other's space. We don't have this as much of this personal space going on. It's also just fun and romantic and affirming of the relationship, and it might help you to bring some other things into balance too. I'm Dr. Ruthie. I hope that this helps those of you who find that nobody wants to be initiating any relationship, or that it's one-sided initiation, the other person could use some tips. And I will see you around. Thanks a bunch.